Welcome back to the Alt. Thank you for joining me again today. I am your host, Shapirian. Thrilled to be back with you after Week 6 Sunday. I'm going to be honest with you up front. That was an exhausting Sunday of football, top to bottom. These weeks with the London games tend to just absolutely drain me, and I'm excited to talk about it with you. We're going to talk about a couple of the bigger games a little more in depth. Ravens, Commanders, Lions, Cowboys. We'll get to my 5 and 5, where I give you 5 takes in 5 minutes. I'm excited to get right into it. Before we do, if you could please do me a favor, check and see if you're subscribed to the channel. If you're not, please consider doing so. I would really appreciate it. It means a lot more to me than you know. It just takes a second. You can also leave me a comment down below if you have some additional to add, or you can follow me on most social media at the Alt NFL. I'd love to hear from you anyway. Without any further ado, let's get right into the football discussion. I'm going to start this one off talking about Ravens Commanders, although I don't know that it's going to be a common headlining game for the Monday morning news shows. But this was the game that everyone was hyped up for. This was supposed to be the game of the century, the game of the millennium, and did it deliver? Not to those standards. And if you watch the Alt, if you listen to the Alt, I hope you do, you would know that I thought it was going to be this case. It was actually a little closer than I thought it would be. I probably would have had the Ravens by like 12. It's not a sexy football score number. 12's a hard one to get to, but you know what I mean? Like I probably would have had them around like 10 to 12. 7-point game. So, I mean, do with that what you will. The Ravens continue to roll. 4 straight wins. Now they have, in my opinion, officially made it through the gauntlet part of their schedule after starting 0-2, which is so weird. Football is so weird the way it starts. Like, the vibes could not have been worse surrounding Baltimore after that 0-2 start. And then they're like, oh, and it only gets worse too, by the way. Nah, they've won the next 4. And it was a really impressive 4. Cowboys, Bills, Bengals, Commanders. A great stretch of 4 wins there to really pile it on. And the best part of it all is if you're the Ravens, you look at it right now, and Lamar the passer, not Lamar the runner, Lamar the passer, is this the best he's ever looked down this stretch? I mean, it feels like every time the ball leaves his hands, you expect it to be completed. And even though he's got 2 MVP awards, even though they looked like they were going to win the Super Bowl this year, even though I picked him to win it, it looked like they were going to win the Super Bowl last year, even though I picked him to win it this year, I don't know that there's ever been a point in his NFL career where I expect every pass that leaves his hand to be caught for like a 12 to 15 yard game at a minimum. And I don't know that that's ever been the case. Then on top of that, there's this guy, you might have heard of him. His name is Derrick Henry. and my first thoughts on him, he should be causing the league to reevaluate the running back position. Him, CMC, who I get is hurt this year. I completely understand it. There might be another one I might be missing there. Maybe that's not a fair stance. Maybe Saquon, like he's had his high moments, but I feel like he's kind of died down just a little bit, as the Eagles in general kind of have as well, and the momentum feels a little strange there. But there are still guys that, outside of the name value, which I feel like is why we kind of lost recipes that we did with halfbacks there, was like a lot of the guys that were big names that had a big year or two would go to that second team and just wouldn't do that well, or would get that big contract with their first team and just wouldn't do that well. Derrick Henry is on contract number 3 in the NFL and is still looking very, very effective. And I don't even have words to explain what that does for this Ravens offense. The read option isn't even being used all that effectively at times. Like, they're not using it a ton, and it's their best play, right? Like, conceptually speaking, that's got to be their number 1 highest performing play, like on paper. And it's not even really the reason that they are in the position that they're in right now. The Ravens look freaking awesome. Now, I gotta say, talk about Ravens Commanders, 30-23. It was a fun game down the stretch. Not a super close second half. Commanders defense kind of didn't do many favors there. But the difference in the game was, technically speaking, like if you look at the box score, like quarter 1, 2, 3, 4, I think it was identical in every quarter except the second. It was 14-7 Ravens. There's your 7 points. That's why they lost by 7. But it never felt super close in the second half, for what it's worth. It just didn't. And the bigger overarching storyline for both of these teams is that both of these defenses are insanely concerning, and for very different reasons. Maybe for similar reasons. You look at the Commanders' defense, and that secondary in particular, I'm like, that does not feel like an NFL-level secondary. It just doesn't. They don't seem to play like one. They don't seem to communicate like one. A lot of mistakes. Benjamin St. Just in particular was, he got grilled by the announcers all during this game. They're like, oh, he's behind. Oh, that's bad. Oh, you can't do that. And that's how you know what's bad, is when they're name dropping a cornerback repeatedly like that. And yeah, he was killing them. And in general, there's a couple plays that if you just have like an average secondary, I don't know that the Ravens got in this one. But obviously, if you're the Commanders and you look at the Ravens' passing defense this season, I think the same can also be said for them. Like, there's a couple plays there where it's like, I don't know that every defense in the league gives that up. Both of these defenses are concerning, and they're going to be the number one biggest red flag down the stretch. Talking to, my dad, who's a Commanders fan, he's like, well, it's our Achilles heel. And honestly, my first thought is like, first of all, relatable. Second of all, an entire phase of the game cannot be your Achilles heel if you're going to be a really good team. And he said, and I agree with him, he's like, we're still going to compete in the NFC this season. I said, I totally agree. I do. I really think so. They should still feel great in regards to both the NFC East and the NFC as a whole, in my opinion. I'm not even a little bit down on the Commanders after this game. My concerns and questions for them are the same that they've been really since week 3, right? Where it's just the defense that I really am concerned about. I wonder if the lack of name value, and maybe that's not a fair conversation, forgive me if that seems like it's coming in bad faith, but I wonder if the lack of name value on their offense is going to come back to haunt them down the stretch. But it really doesn't seem to work like that in the NFL most of the time. You can usually get a year or two with a bunch of no names. Terry McLaurin's not a no name, Austin Eckler's not a no name, Zach Ertz isn't a no name, but you get what I'm saying. Those aren't even really the focal points of their offense. You know what I mean? Noah Brown was wide receiver 1 for them today in a lot of ways, even though McLaurin had 2 touchdowns. It's funny how that works. I wonder if that'll catch up with him, but I'm not worried about the offense. I'm worried about their defense. For the Ravens, let's switch back to them, get back into a Ravens gear for a second. Looking forward, those 2 losses feel like an eternity ago. An eternity ago. And I'm feeling better about their chances to go win the dang thing. And I'm talking about a Lombardi in February, week by week. And, I think they should also be a team that's looking to be aggressive at the deadline too. And I'll say the same for the Commanders in a second as well. But I don't know. I both feel really good about their standing while also acknowledging their defense needs some help. I don't know what that help can be. There's names all over the field, but the performance just isn't there. And I feel like they're about to go on a run, legitimately. And I'm not even schedule watching here. I did look at the schedule, but that's not the feeling here. I have a bit of a prediction here. It's a soft prediction, a very soft prediction in general. I think they're going to be among the league's first to 10 wins. I don't think there will be more than maybe 3 other teams to beat them to 10 wins at most, right? Chiefs, Lions. Who beats them to 10 wins besides those 2 teams? Maybe the Commanders, depending on how things work out, but I don't think I'm predicting that after today. No way. They're both 4-2 now, and I like the Ravens' trajectory more than I like Washington's. And then to end it, move back onto the Commanders for a second as we wrap on this segment. Talk about a team that should be active at the deadline. The Commanders are the picture-perfect team that should be active at the trade deadline. They really are. Because you look at them and the teams that should be active is oh my God, we're overperforming expectations. Those are the teams that should go make deals at the deadline. And I hope they do. I would love to see them. I hate to just play GM for a second here, but there's rumors about Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne, the 2 of the highest paid D tackles in the league. They look like non-factors out there. And I still think because the interior defensive line play in the NFL is the worst that's been in quite some time, they could get at least a third or a player swap for something there to help. I think it's worth looking into if I'm them. I don't know. I'd even look into moving off some high-end draft picks if the right player comes up to make a good move to help your outlook for this season. Because next season's not promised. We know that. If you're good this season, go for it. Who's to say? But, yeah. Congrats to the Ravens. 4-2, 4 straight wins. I think you're about to go on a serious run. Washington, I don't think any Washington fan is down about this one. Right? I really don't. So with that said, you shouldn't be. And your outlook for this season, still incredibly promising, especially compared to where everyone in the world thought it would be going into the year. So let's move on to a much less fun game overall. Got to be one of the most disappointing games of the season this year, right? Lions, Cowboys. What happened? I don't know what happened in this one. The Lions just scored their most points in a game since 2011. They have 89 points in their last 2 games. That's their most in a 2-game span since 1962. And to sum it up, they looked fresh and on fire. The Cowboys looked lost. And that's the best way I can sum it up for them. Let's focus on the Lions, the victor in this one for a second. And what's starting to become more and more apparent to me as time moves on is that offense has way more ways to beat you than you would have thought by looking at a depth chart. Like, J-Mo might be better than Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Amon-Ra St. Brown is a certified wide receiver 1 in this league, right? And he's paid as such, and he plays as such. But, like, J-Mo is a throwback to a different kind of receiver. And then Sam Laporta isn't even being used the way we thought he could and the way he was at points last year. And then Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery are still both just playing very average. Neither of them are playing at like a feature back type level, which we're still expecting for Jahmyr Gibbs. Just extended David Montgomery again, very reasonably so, very well deserved. David Montgomery has been great for the Lions. He's been a fantastic addition for them. And it still just feels like they're not playing to their peak. This team can beat you in a lot of different ways. Jared Goff is playing rather mistake-free football, which is the recipe for them to go and win a ton of games. Again, you'll hear me talk about recipes a lot on this show. Recipes for a team to win, recipes for a team to lose. And what you pull out of the oven on any given Sunday is going to matter a lot as to whether or not you win or lose. For the Lions, if you are guaranteed, you're just like, all right, here's what you know about the game. Dave Montgomery has 2 touchdowns. Jared Goff is basically mistake-free. And the defense holds them to, I don't even want to say 0 touchdowns. Like, that's not even an average game, even though it is what happened in the Dallas game. The defense holds them to less than 20. You're like, well, that's a win. We win. We win that game. And it feels that way. And they have so many ways to beat you that, they're the team to beat in the NFC. Bottom line, they are the team to beat in the NFC. We have to move on for a second and, try to balance, like, the analyst side of the show versus the human side of the show here and talk about the Aiden Hutchinson injury, sorry. I'm not a doctor. We know it's bad. Everyone knows it's bad. If you haven't seen it, take my word for it. It's bad. It's a bad watch. It's not fun. It's very gruesome looking. And the whole world knows, he's out. Emergency surgery on the way. Season's over. I want to first, before I talk about outlook, just from the human side of things, even though I know this is never going to get back to him and this is irrelevant in the grand scheme, send my absolute condolences to him and his family because that is a terrifying injury. It's awful to watch that happen to someone you know. And for it to be Aiden Hutchinson, who means so much to Detroit and the state of Michigan, is terrible. It's terrible. Going to me personally, as a lifelong Michigan fan, Aiden Hutchinson is one of my 3 or 4 favorite college football players of all time. To watch him outperform expectations and make good on his draft pick selection status, like how high he was taken, has been amazing. It's been amazing. So, with that out of the way and knowing how much I love Aiden Hutchinson, that's a horrifying injury. So, we're obviously wishing him the best. Everyone's wishing him the best. I will try to, as respectfully as possible, talk about the football outlook side of things for the Lions with that out of the way. And that is to say, while I still feel like they're absolutely going to be a team to beat in the NFC minus Aiden Hutchinson, a defensive end injury to a certified game-wrecking edge rusher is about as bad of an injury as you could have in the NFL for a seriously contending team, a Super Bowl contending team. And so we're going to need a few weeks to know what this means for the Lions. We really are. But on the surface, if there's a defense in the league that could afford to lose debatably their best defensive player, I think most Lions fans would say he's their number 1 defensive player. It's probably the Detroit Lions. It really is. There's so many pieces on this team that could pick these guys up and still be great. Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch, DJ Reader. They have people all over the field who are fantastic defensive assets, who are flying all over the field, who help impose their will to the game. And you saw that today against Dallas. So, I don't want to make any blanket statements right now. Yes, I am concerned for the Lions post Aiden Hutchinson injury, and I'm hoping he's able to make a full recovery and still come back and be a game wrecker for them for years and years and years. I need to see it. I know he can do it, and that's a motivated guy who is absolutely more than up to the challenge. I know that. But for the Lions, let's give us some time before we decide to make any blanket statements on it. Let's get to the Cowboys for a second. There's a very real chance you clicked on this to listen to me talk about the Cowboys. I don't know what I'm going to make the title of the thumbnail as of the time of recording, but Dallas. I said it to start this segment. You looked so lost today. And I have one giant question for them coming out of this game. More than anything. What is your identity? What is it as a team? You looked so bad on the defensive side of the ball in the first half that to win this game, you would have needed nuclear Dak. And we obviously didn't get that. Nuclear Dak was not in the building today. Okay? But obviously, being the quarterback, he gets a lot of eyes. And maybe this is in bad faith for me to say with them scoring 9 points today, but was Dak Prescott the problem today? I don't know. When you come out and you're getting smoked immediately, it's like, oh my God, did I have to play literally perfect football to win today? I've been discussing this with the Bengals, and it's like, if your recipe to win is for your quarterback to play perfect, you're not going to win a lot of games. You might win 4 or 5 all season, right? That's very true for the Cowboys, especially. And again, it looked like a very lost football team. When I look at this team and their outlook, I'm so close to moving them out of Super Bowl contending status. We're not there yet. We're not, because I think a lot of their problems are fixable, as crazy as that sounds to say with how they've looked at points this season. I think their problem is fixable. They have recipes to win games. They've done it. They're 500. They're not 0-6. But I think a massive change of sorts is needed for them to be a Super Bowl contender come January and February. Let me specify, I don't necessarily mean a coaching change. I don't necessarily mean a blockbuster trade. I more so mean a change in the way they approach games, a game planning change. Maybe you attack in a different kind of way. Is Mike McCarthy going to be the coach to do that? I have no clue. But, Mike McCarthy might not even be the issue. I'm a Mike Zimmer truther. He was great as the Bengals defensive coordinator. He's great in Minnesota. I had a lot of high points with them, honestly. But it's not looking good. It's looking like one of the worst coaching acquisitions of the offseason. And it makes me incredibly concerned when he was asked to come in and be like, fix this defense. Then I watch this offense and I'm like, you can't run the ball at all. And if CeeDee Lamb isn't playing like the wide receiver that he can, if he's not out there going for 125 yards and 2 touchdowns a game, how do they win these big games? Their best win of the season, it's got to be the Steelers game, right? They've beaten the Browns, the Giants, and the Steelers. I'm not moved. I'm not moved. And I wanted to be moved by them. I've been enjoying watching them throughout this entire era. And I genuinely thought this was a team that could compete for a Super Bowl this year. You need that bye week badly. And the Lions, for what it's worth, I hate you're going on bye and you're playing a team coming off it. For example, the Bengals, I think, play 2 teams coming off their byes this season, which I think almost never happens. Maybe that's not a fair statement. It feels like it almost never happens. But yeah, and mini byes and things like that factor into it. Teams coming off byes win a lot. Teams coming off mini byes when you play on Thursday night the next week win a lot. Lions looked fresh. Cowboys looked lost. You have that bye week. You come back, and then you're traveling to San Francisco. And then you've got Atlanta. And then you've got Philly, who we don't know what we think about them at this current moment. And then you've got Houston. And then you have Washington twice coming up on the schedule. There's not a lot of time to be asking questions, Dallas. You're 500. It's okay to be 500 right now. I wish my team was 500 right now, right? A lot of teams wish they were 500 right now. But this is a team with more questions than answers, and I'm very concerned for them. Lions, team to beat in the NFC. Cowboys, a ton of concerns. Not out on them yet. I'm not writing them off. But they need to fix something. Maybe they need to be active at the trade deadline. I don't know what trade they should make. I don't know that they're a one trade away kind of team. But it would be nice to see them do something. Remember they passed on Derrick Henry, by the way? imagine this team right now with Derrick Henry on offense, being able to help them set the tone on offense. You probably don't score just 9 points in any game. Just saying. All right, moving on now to one of the things I like to do to kind of recap the games I didn't have time to really dive deep into for these Sunday games. It's time for 5 and 5, where I'll give you 5 takes in 5 minutes. Similar to last week, I anticipate the 5th one will go a little bit over. You'll have to forgive me. And then after this, I'll get to my Monday night score prediction and, as a result, my winner prediction for that as well. But let's get right into this part of the show. This is 5 and 5. Let's start in London, where the Jaguars got crushed today. We'll talk twice about it in this segment because it's worth talking about. But I have this to say about Doug Peterson. This is take number 1. He's probably coaching his last game for the Jaguars next week, also in London, unless they win. And I have to say this right now. If it wasn't the Patriots or perhaps the Titans, I would probably have ended that sentence early. And I would just be saying Doug Peterson is coaching his last game for the Jaguars next week. This has been a failure of a season. They clearly need a change. I think they need a coaching change. I probably will ask Treads what he thinks about it this week, depending on if there's other stories about it, because he said the same thing, kind of agreed with me on it. It's just not been the right season, and something has to change. They're too talented to be winning as seldom as they are right now, and Trevor Lawrence isn't going anywhere. He just signed a big contract. Moving on to take number 2. I want to just confess and say that I drastically underestimated the offensive capabilities of the Green Bay Packers going into the season. I want to recognize that now before the season gets any further. I don't want to back off of my stance and say, I don't think they can win the Super Bowl. I'm not saying that I'm changing on that, but they seem to be very effective in a lot of different ways. You look at the NFC as a whole, it's so wide open. You have the Lions at the top. Who's number 2 right now? In all seriousness, it's probably the Green Bay Packers. And that's not what I would have expected. Oh, no, it's the Minnesota Vikings. What am I thinking? They go on bye week for 1 week and I forget about them. It's been the Vikings so far this season, but it's kind of hard for me to look at it and say that I wouldn't have a higher outlook on the Packers' long-term likelihoods of winning games. I'm trying to just say I like the Packers better in the long haul than I do the Vikings. Love the Vikings. I underestimated the Packers on offense in particular going into the season. They look awesome. Moving on to take number 3. I want to say this one, and this one's no fun for me to say at all, and there's a lot that goes into this. I want to say that the Pittsburgh Steelers are safely a top 5 AFC team as things currently stand. I'm not backing off of my playoff takes with them, being that, sure, I see them, potentially making the playoffs. I didn't pick them myself. It's not because I don't think they could make it. I said they could, but I still don't see them winning a ton of playoff games. I think they're going to struggle when they get there, but that defense, in my opinion, is the best in the NFL right now. And Fields is still playing the game that I said after week 1, after week 2, after week 3. I said he's playing the Mike Tomlin game that he wants him to play, where he just goes out there, he doesn't make mistakes, and then the defense does their job, so they win games. Steelers are not going to be going anywhere right now. And if you look at it, yes, weird 8-game gauntlet in the season. They're going to be in a great spot when they get there, and that's how the Steelers always make the playoffs. Top 5 team in the AFC right now. Look at the list, it's true. Now moving on to take number 4. Going back to that London game, Caleb Williams just had his best game of his NFL career, and he still has so much room to grow. But he has the Bears at 4-2. I saw today that's never happened for a number 1 overall pick who started his first 6 games of his rookie season. They never are 4-2. Why? Part of it is that you're young and inexperienced. The other part of it is you're usually on really bad teams. Caleb Williams, sure, he's still inexperienced on the NFL level, but the team around him is very good. I want to talk about the defense for just a second. I did pick the Bears to make the playoffs, but look at this stat so far. They've only given up 20 points in a game so far, 1 time this season. Once, and it was 21 against the Colts, 21-16. So right now, it looks like their margin is 22, 23 points a game. You're going to be right there for all of them. I'm so optimistic for the Bears' outlook this season, especially with what they've done in these first 6 weeks. It should only get better. So Bears fans, you have to be feeling good about it. Take number 5. One that might go a little long here. You'll have to forgive me. I got to squeak this in here. Don't chastise me for saying I'll do my best to avoid this thing. This is take number 5. I think the Cincinnati Bengals have a coaching problem, and I want to bring it up here because the national media won't touch it, and I don't know why they won't touch it. Even when Marvin Lewis was the Bengals head coach, they only touched it when he was losing playoff games. Once a year, they'd be like, oh, this guy can't win playoff games. And then they'd come back the next year, and they make the playoffs again. Oh, this guy can't win playoff games. That's the only time they would ever get discussed, it feels like. And right now, you look at it like weekly. You were getting Robert Saleh talks weekly. You're getting Brian Daboll weekly. Kyle Shanahan talk weekly. Nick Sirianni talk weekly. And it's crazy. And you look at like Shanahan, he's obviously not in the hot seat, but I feel like right now it's like, oh my God, we got to talk about Kyle Shanahan. Do we? More than anybody else? I don't get that. The Bengals specifically have a Zach Taylor problem, in my opinion. And this is not fun for me. I love Zach Taylor as a person. Joe Burrow has gone on the record saying he loves him. He wants him to be his coach his whole career. He's adamantly said that exact sentence before. And so what is it about it that I don't like? Well, I just don't like the way, I feel like he has no game sense. I don't like the way he calls games. He's their offensive play caller. He's never been a successful offensive play caller on any level. And when you look at these games, the two worst teams they've played this season, the Patriots and the Giants, they've played down to both of them. Reasonably, hey, listen to this, reasonably should have lost both of them. You did lose to the Patriots, and that's going to be the one that keeps you out of the playoffs, in my opinion, down the line. That's going to be the one that you're like, we didn't make the playoffs because we lost to the Patriots. Tonight against the Giants, Sunday night against the Giants, if you're listening on Monday, coaching still should have lost you this game. The offensive game plan was very weak. You clearly did not prepare for the Giants' front seven the way you should have. They lead the league in sacks still after that game. I don't get it. And it's inconsistencies, and it's the fact that, you look at them, they still haven't won a one-score game this season because of that weird Chase Brown touchdown as time was running down in this game that got them to, a 10-point lead, 17-7. And I don't think they'll win many one-score games at all for the rest of Zach Taylor's coaching tenure. I think they're going to lose a lot of them, right? And that's just who he is. I think we've seen the best of Zach Taylor. I think we've seen enough from Zach Taylor as the Bengals head coach to say that's who he is. That's him. These are his teams. They're undisciplined right now, which has not been characteristic, but it seems to get worse every single season, this season being the worst. They can't finish games. You get their worst play calling typically as games start and as games end. Well, dude, you're trying to establish the game in the beginning. That's games, in a lot of cases, can, not often, but can be won in the beginning if you go out and boom, 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 we're up 21-0. Well, the game's probably over. And at the end of the game, I don't have to explain why that's crucial and why it's frustrating to feel like you're getting your worst play calling, your worst situational football with games on the line. It's frustrating. I'm not saying I'm calling for his job. I'm just saying that I think if they would have lost tonight, or again, last night if you're listening on Monday, I would have been calling for his job if they would have lost on Sunday. I would have said, I don't understand why he's still the coach. This team cannot be 1-5. It shouldn't be 2-4. And there's a lot of reasons they are. The head coach has to answer for at least part of that. That was 5-5, more like 5-7 or so this week. Appreciate you for bearing with me there. Had to get my weekly Bengals, rant. I guess it's a weekly Bengals rant at this point because it's just not been fun. I was thinking about it. The game I went to with Treads in Carolina was fun when we were scoring. Obviously, we won and stuff. I've not had fun this season at all. We're one of the only, 5 or 6 teams that have not had, any fun this season? This stinks! Hopefully it gets better. 2-4, winnable one against the Browns next week. We'll see. Let's move on to the Monday Night Football game real quick as we close out the show here. Bills at Jets. Jeff Ulbrich, first game as the interim head coach. Is he going to be able to get the job done? Bills lost 3 straight. I'm slipping my mind right now. Are they 4-2 or 3-3? I literally cannot remember. It's 2, right? They're 4-2. 3-2. Duh, this is week 6. Forgive me. They've lost 2 straight after starting 3-0. That's why I couldn't think about it. I'm thinking of teams with 6 games right now because most teams have played 6 games. The 3-2, they've lost 2 straight. They're going to lose a 3rd consecutive game? I don't think so. Josh Allen does not lose 3 consecutive games. That's something that he doesn't do. The good quarterbacks tend to not. Doesn't happen very often. In particular, I've been on the record, and I'm going to stay on the record of saying I don't think Jeff Ulbrich fixes these Jets' problems. I think the Bills win this one by a couple of scores. I think they win 28-16, put their season right back on track, put the Jets down at 2-4. So, worth noting. So, with that said, that wraps up this episode of The Alt. If you made it this far on the show, thank you. I love you. I appreciate you. and I don't take you for granted one bit. Leave a comment down below if you have anything to add, or if I missed anything, or if I struck a nerve with you on something. I've been striking a nerve on a lot of these episodes with at least one person, so if that's you, let me know. I'd love to hear from you, even if it's coming right at me. With that said, we'll be back tomorrow to talk about that Monday night game, some other stuff that happened in Week 6 that we didn't get to talk about. I'm excited about it. It was a really fun week of football overall, and I'm thrilled to be looking ahead to the rest of this week. So with that said, that's all for this one. I will see you back here tomorrow.